Hi, everyone. Welcome to our NewCampus conference, Educating the Next Generation of Leaders. My name is Lily. I'm the host for today, and I'm the head of programs at NewCampus. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Please write in the chat your name, where you are from, and also what you're looking to get out of today's session. So, for this conference, we have split it into two panels, for two panel sessions with a 10-minute break in between. Also remember, if that you took a screenshot or a photo from today, please tag us on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at NewCampus HQ. Our account details are going to be linked in the comment section right now. So for those who have attended our previous conferences over the past few months, welcome back. We've had some really exciting topics previously around sustainability, business, and innovation. We had design ethics of technology, the new virtual reality, creative destruction in a pandemic, and equally excited for the engaging discussion we are going to have today around the learning mindsets of modern leaders in the future of work. So for all of our newcomers, welcome. To briefly introduce NewCampus, we are a modern leadership school that aims to equip a new generation of critical thinkers and learners to really navigate the challenges of the unprecedented global change ahead with the right skills, the insights, and connections. And this is done in a multi-formatted interactive way, whether that is through our 90-minute interdisciplinary-based leadership workshops, our Power Ladies breakfasts and power lunches, where you learn directly from industry leaders, or it could be through our monthly conferences like today, where we delve straight into a specific trend or topic from multiple angles and perspectives. So over the next 2 hours, we'll be speaking with industry and global leaders on how, as we face new and unprecedented challenges, we need innovative ways to educate and develop the next generation of leaders who can inspire and inject global change. So let me scroll here. So our first session will be on learning mindsets of modern leaders. As a rapidly changing world demands that leadership development programs must remain competitive and relevant. And as global issues become increasingly complex to solve, no longer should we count on knowledge-based initiative to train capable leaders. Instead, the shift is set towards developing modern leaders with new skills and ways of learning that will see us through the future. So today we've invited amazing speakers from Microsoft, from GDEXA, and C-Suite who are designing their learning programs, what they think the knowledge gaps in the workforce are, and how companies can play their part in developing top talent from within. So we're really excited to get this ball rolling. So without further ado, let's start this conference. So get comfortable. I'm going to introduce our first moderator to kickstart this panel session today, where we have Will Fan. I'll invite Will to the stage. So Will is the co-founder at NewCampus, where we're building Asia's largest and most inclusive business school. He looks after everything from enterprise sales to partnerships to working with government on changing education policy. So over to you, Will.
Thanks for that, Lily. And it's always a strange phrase when you say welcome to the stage when we've been doing Zoom calls for the past 9 months. Guys, thank you so much for attending today's session. Really keen to dive deeper into what makes a modern leader in a time like this. What's the mindset or skill sets that you need in a VUCA world? And so I'm going to be inviting 3 really experienced and insightful panelists to be joining me today. We have Dean, who's the founder and CEO at C-Suite. They're a learning platform to help leaders become better managers. Outside of that, he's an award-winning journalist. He spent a lot of time in different countries, including Switzerland, Dubai, Australia, and now Singapore. The next we'll be inviting Verdane. So she's the chief of staff at Microsoft Asia. Her story is that she works very closely with the leadership team to empower their customers, their partners, employee to achieve more and be the best version of themselves. What I love about the Microsoft strategy over the past decade is they've been able to supercharge the brand and the user experience of their products and constantly empower their team to listen, adapt, and innovate, especially in a time like now. And finally, I'm inviting Elaine, the co-founder at GDEXA, and they're a platform that is shaping the digital workforce for the future through global mentorship, upskilling, and collaborative learning. Previously, she spent her life overseeing strategy at tech organizations like IBM, SAP, and Oracle. And I just found out that she's been intensely studying Japanese over the past couple of years to, really open her mind cross-border. So I guess I'll kickstart by just asking everyone on the panel to introduce yourself. What's your story? What's your mission? And something a bit fun for a Friday, what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself this year? I'll hand it first over to Dean.
Dropped in the deep end. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Dean. I've been a journalist for many years. That's how I started, and I still think of myself as a journalist. That actually, even though I climbed up the management ranks, up the greasy pole, and I've been in general management for a number of years now. My background, as I said, is very much media, but also events. I've also worked at some startups as well, including Numbers, which is a fintech company in Switzerland, and The Asian Parent here in Singapore. And I'm now building a new startup of my own with my co-founders called C-Suite. C-Suite is a lifetime learning platform, and whereas NewCampus is, educating the next generation of leaders, we're hoping to do that as well as the current generation as well. And we are just building our tech at the moment, so we'll be launching our MVP in a couple of weeks from now. So stay tuned and do join us on our lifetime learning platform. What have I learned about myself this year? Wow, that's really interesting. I've learned probably that I'm pretty resilient, but I think everyone's had a year where they've learned that they're pretty resilient, right, because of COVID-19. So I think you can either sink into a depression at times like these, or you can grab the bull by the horns and realize, this is just going to speed up disruption. This is just going to speed up digital transition, and embrace it. So that's what we're trying to do at C-Suite, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Dean. And I totally hear you when it comes to, what makes up resilience. And I know a lot of people on the call today, as well as those listening on the recording, will be hopefully reflecting over the next 12 months, what did they do and how did they push themselves differently in a COVID world? I'd love to pass the baton over to Elaine. Tell us your story and what did you learn about yourself this year?
Thank you, Will and all. First of all, this year, it's not a year that I thought it would be, right? Sometimes I spend some money to attend some of the geomancy and live fortune telling. And I think COVID is a different factor that affects all our life. And this is a year that I cannot predict, I cannot forecast, right? So although I had the habit in the beginning of the year to check what is my life like. But I guess my key takeaway and my learning is life is in your hands. You decide what you want to do. So when COVID occurred, we were all locked down. Things are not usual. I think what I learned is to take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones, take care of the critical components of your life, both professionally and personally. I guess it also taught us how to spend time more wisely and not to assume that time is given to you in any way you like. And freedom cannot be bought by money, right? And this is shown by COVID. But that said, being a learner and a student for all my life, I have never stopped learning. So as such, I picked up Japanese cooking twice a month. So I whip out tonkatsu, tempura, made my handmade udon. And at the same time, I picked up United Nations Immersion program in August. And why I did that is because I felt that this COVID is teaching us a life lesson that if you can drive all sustainable goals, greener, safer, and more equitable world, such COVID impact could be lesser. So I think this is what I can share with you, Will, and the rest. Thank you.
Exciting. And for those on the call, and obviously my team, we all know that we're fanatics in tonkatsu and udon. So if you have an invitation, happy to extend that over.
Well, let's do the next session on cooking.
Definitely. For Dane, welcome, and really excited to hear your story as well. How's the year been for you?
Thank you. The year has been pretty good. The external environment notwithstanding, there have been lots of articles around how the lockdown and the circuit breaker and the need for people to stay at home and work from home has also, while it's been difficult for some, it's been great for others. And I'm in the others who are supposedly introverts. So I'm beginning to appreciate and come out more, I guess, to say, yeah, I'm an introvert. I actually have enjoyed the time that I've had working from home. I have had the opportunity to spend more time with my kids. In my job, I travel quite a lot, so all of that's gone. And in the space of that, in the spaces which used to be filled by traveling to work or traveling to another country, I've been able to optimize and focus a lot more on personal development, which is great, and resonating with Elaine about focusing more on life goals and things like that. So I've always been very purpose driven, but even more so now. Now, just a little bit about me in terms of where I'm from. I've worked in the industry for 20 plus years. I was counting just now, and I was starting to get to close to 30, and I'm getting a little bit embarrassed about the number. But I've worked in companies like EMC and Apple, and then the last 13 years I've been with Microsoft doing various roles from sales and marketing, and then most recently to chief of staff for Microsoft in Asia. Now, you asked about something funny. I had a funny, and then I also had a serious thing that I learned about myself. I'll start with the serious thing. The serious thing I learned about myself is actually that I've started to, that as individuals and as the blurring of the lines between work and personal lives has happened in the last months, there's a need to set more boundaries around what you will and will not do, and how you will spend your time. And that has been a big, I never had to do that before because there were just natural boundaries to work and life. But now I think I've become a lot more of a student around the need for boundaries, and also the courage to set boundaries when it's been difficult. So that's one big thing that I've been working to overcome the last couple of months. On the funny side, I've also been driving around Singapore more, again, because I was traveling. I kind of left the driving to others, but now I'm driving around a lot more, and I realized that, hey, I can't park straight for some reason after so many years of knowing how to drive. I drive a Prius. I'm very passionate about hybrid cars. And my Prius, for some reason, is pear-shaped, and I've just come to the conclusion it's not possible to park straight.
Yeah, I haven't driven a car in years, so I think that's something that I need to relearn myself. And again, thank you so much, all three of you guys, to share your story. I wanted to dive a bit deeper because this session is obviously more around how do you build the right type of learner mindset, especially in a time that is so unprecedented. Dean, you're doing a lot of work in coaching the future manager, coaching the future mindset. Can you share a bit more about your thesis behind, what is the mindset that one needs in a time that is unprecedented like now?
Yeah. Well, I think, when we talk about a growth mindset, yes, it's about the individual, right? And the onus is on you as a professional, as a person, to want to get better, to do the things that make you better. But it should also be about growth of your company, right? Whether it's your own company or not. It should also be about growth of your industry. So growing the segment that you work in, so that there's a virtuous circle. So I really believe in that. And in terms of learning and development, I think for us, we feel all of it rests on the 3 C's, right? Of community, content, and connectivity. And you kind of need all of that, and it all needs to feed into each other. So by community, I mean being a really active member of the community in your industry, in your workplace, and content-wise, consuming content, creating content, curating content from others. You know, this is something you need to do to keep learning, to keep developing, but also to pay it forwards, right? And to help others along the way, because when you're helping others to learn, you're actually learning at the same time, right? You're learning from them during that process. And then the final C, which is connectivity, which you know, never has there been a more important time to be well connected, right? And to make new connections and widen and deepen existing connections than during COVID, right? Because you know, everyone is struggling a bit with work from home, or if you've got a hybrid arrangement, you know, working from home 2 or 3 days a week and going into the office the rest of the time. It's a brave new world for all of us, and I don't think any of us are fully adjusted to it yet. So yeah, I'd say that's the approach we're working on, and that we really believe in.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dean. And I totally agree with the whole connectivity piece. You know, we kind of napped back the past 9 months, and the first quarter, everyone was doing Zoom meetings and Zoom catch-ups, and then you started having all these Zoom backgrounds. But now, you know, going to Q3, Q4, there's Zoom fatigue. So I do put a very big question mark on, you know, what does the world of 2021 look like in terms of that hybrid model where, you know, some introverts, you know, prefer to be more, you know, heads down, but those extroverts still need that interpersonal experience. Elaine, you do a lot of work around mentorship, and I wanted to kind of bridge the conversation around community and connections. Tell me a bit about your work and how you've seen the change of mentorship from offline traditionally to now being global and online. How have you seen that shift in your work?
Sure, though. The association that I have set up 2 years ago, GDEXA, which is what it meant is Global Digital Excellence Association. This is actually not set up in Singapore, and it has already been remote since 2 years ago. So to me, there's no technical difference between online, offline, all right? So GDEXA, actually, I focus on 2 big regions. One is Asia Pacific, the other is the Europe. So my co-founder, who's my partner in this, is actually a Turkish, but living in Germany. So to answer your question, I guess we're running literally 24/7, because when I'm asleep, he's awake. And the second thing is that we have more than 50 to 60 diversified business leaders across different industry at across different levels to offer mentorship, because we believe that not only the most senior can provide the coaching and mentorship, but also at peer level and across different industries. So to me, the last 6-7 months, there are a lot more conversation and questions around what is next, and we have to address more personal issues alongside with professional agenda. We see a lot more emotion flushing out, such as like fear, uncertainty, worry, and not to ignore that many have lost jobs. So I guess right now, if we're talking about today, how we can shape the group of community out there, whether they are graduates or digital aspiring professional or mid-career professional, thinking of changing, we're all trying to shape them to be more resilient, responsive, and relevant to the changing world of today. Now, is COVID complex? Yes, because COVID is unpredictable. It come and go. It is not something that you can spray and say it's all gone, right? Unless other, different from other analytical business problems that we have. There seems to be no end to that, and it can come and go. So I don't believe that it's a wave is down, it's up, it's not. It's just that we do not know where it is. So for us as a leader, how do we approach that? We can only advise the mentee to adopt learning mindset, because only with the learning mindset, you can actually grow your mind to be stronger emotionally, to take the failure, to take the rejects, and to step forward, to take another bolder step. It is going to be a time where not everybody is going to be very happy. There'll be some that will continue to strive. There'll be some who may not make it during this era. But our key mentorship is talking about do not lose hope. And with the power of the network, we believe that today is a global workforce, that you may not be in Asia, I can get you to Europe. If it is Europe is not right, I can get you to China. So I'm hoping with my little extension of my network, I can offer this kind of help unconditionally to anyone who need help. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Elaine. I'll pass this on as a segue to Verdane, because I know that Microsoft does a lot of innovative experiments and a lot of practices around uplifting their workforce. Even earlier this year, you made it compulsory, or you gave Microsoft employees the option to be working remotely. So I'd love to hear more about the work that you do in terms of thinking about building resilience, building good habits, and building that learner mindset for your entire organization. How do you look at that piece?
Yeah, it's been a journey for us over the last 5 years, actually. So when Satya Nadella became the CEO, he started talking about how we needed to grow into becoming more of a growth mindset company. And the term he used is moving from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture. And so a lot of things happen in order to enable that. But I would say the most important things that happened was the most important way to actually transform culture is to focus on the leaders and the managers, right? And so there was a lot of effort put into driving this learning culture in the company. And I agree with Dean that learning culture isn't just about consuming. It is also about driving outcomes, because when we learn effectively, you can make success repeatable. And when you learn effectively, you can also take your failures, share those failures, not be afraid to share those failures, and then work to ensure you don't repeat those things. So I think it was the learning culture and the context has to be made in kind of be made in the context of what outcomes you were trying to drive. The old culture was one which was very risk averse, and the new culture is one where, hey, it's okay if someone fails, let's figure out what we can learn from it and grow from there, right? And also in the organization, there were 245,000 employees, so you can imagine diversity and inclusion is a big part of Microsoft as a company. Just in Asia alone, there are 22,000 employees, 62 different nationalities, so we are constantly dealing with very diverse employees and the need for inclusion. So you can't not have a learning culture. You can't not enable people to develop their careers and move from one place to another, or move into different jobs, and not expect that they will be managing a diverse team. So that learning culture is really, really critical for anyone who wants to manage teams and any leader in the company. I would say what we did, which simplified everything and made it very clear for everyone, was this framework which we call model, coach, and care. So all managers and all leaders are expected to model the behaviors. They should coach people on the right behaviors and provide care to their employees. And I would say, especially in the last 9 to 10 months, this care component has just been elevated significantly, because we felt more people needed, not just to be driven to work from home, but they also needed the more of the caring and the softer aspects of development. So those are all the things which I think has contributed to the change in the culture at Microsoft. And the pandemic and the change in work environments has made it even more elevated, for all of us to be model, coach, and care. The issue on resilience has come up a number of times. I think we can spend the whole hour talking about resilience and what we're learning about that. But that's another thing that's new thing that's coming into the conversation, and we are finding ways to try and equip managers as well about resilience. And one learning actually is that just because a manager is resilient, a leader is resilient, doesn't mean that their team is resilient. Mm-hmm. So again, elevating the care component. Just because I'm resilient doesn't mean that somebody in my team is. So teaching everybody to make sure we are asking the softer questions and the questions around personal well-being before we get into the whole big business accountability stuff, conversation. So a lot of learning. You know, we just had a leadership team offsite 2 weeks ago, and we are still learning.
Yeah, and I totally hear you with prioritizing building that learning culture. On the converse side, I do think it's very challenging to really quantitatively measure the ROI of a learner mindset, a growth mindset. And maybe I'll hand the baton over to Dean. I'd love to hear more about your approach to, convincing your partners, your clients. How do you encourage their employees, their team members to be, focused on the softest things like, resilience, having growth mindset, continuously wanting to learn. What's your approach to that?
Well, I mean, keep in mind that C-Suite is yet to launch, right? So in 2 weeks, or maybe in a bit more than 2 weeks from now, I'll be able to tell you a bit more as to exactly how we are approaching it and how we are doing it. But I think it is difficult to quantify it, right? But there are things that are fundamentals that should happen, right? So everyone should have a really good mentor, and preferably a mentor outside of the company, right? So someone where there's a degree of separation that can give you impartial advice and guidance and relevant guidance that isn't tainted by anything within the confines of the company you work at. So that's one thing. Definitely, as I talked about before, community content connectivity. Added to that, I mean, we're talking about, Verdane has been talking about leadership training there and the systems you have in place at Microsoft, which sound fantastic. I think the issue is, right, that not every company is a Microsoft, so for the MNCs, they're kind of bombarded with leadership training, good management principles, and it runs through everything, and it's the norm, right? It's the norm. And to the degree where I know senior people who work at MNCs who kind of see it as a tick box experience because they've done it many times over before, right? And they feel they've got nothing left to learn. I think the real issue we should be talking about, and the real gap in the knowledge, is SMEs and startups, don't have the budget for this, they don't have the time for this, and often not the inclination, right? So to me, it feels that's where things really fall down, particularly in a small team of, where everyone's doing a bit of everything. How can you then say to that team, okay, we're going to have outreach for a day outside of the office. We're not going to talk about anything but leadership, management, professionalization. That's very difficult for the smaller players. So I think that there's a definite gap in the market that needs to be addressed there in terms of upskilling the wider audience beyond the big corporates of this world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally hear you with that, because especially if you look into Asia, majority of the infrastructure is lifted by SMEs, SMBs, and then your regional players. I'd love to double down onto that point, Dean. What do you feel are the learning gaps for companies in Asia? Because we've obviously been doing a lot of R&D and research on leadership, concepts and leadership gaps in Asia. But what do you feel as though are some of the intricate points that you could tackle immediately?
Yeah, I think the culture is driven, right, by it's a trickle down effect by the leaders of a company, right? So unless the leaders believe in it, you're kind of starting not even from zero, you're starting from -5. So I think it's really about leaders at the smaller companies understanding that if you engage in this learning and development for you and for your team, the culture will get better, the business numbers will get better, everyone will be much happier to go into work every day or sit on Zoom calls, as is the case at the moment. But it's about the leaders of the smaller companies being progressive enough to engage with that scenario. And often that happens, but the majority of the time, I would say, it doesn't with smaller companies, and that can be for a number of reasons.
Thanks for sharing, Dean, and appreciate the points of what you're saying. Elaine, I wanted to switch gears a bit. What we're seeing in a lot of our research is learners taking learning into their personal hands. From your experience working with companies large and small, do you think how much responsibility should a company take in developing their people versus the people developing for themselves?
Okay, so I guess there's no right and wrong answer to that because it is all about striking balance, all right? If you look at big organizations where they have the money and the resources, they can throw and offer quite a broad spectrum of training and resources for you. And not everything you need to be trained. So I guess do not go crazy and just say, I pick up all certification, attend all courses, and try to display that, because I think that's just the first point. The second is that you need to do a self-assessment on what else you need, because the company is assessing you as a worker, as a profession in the area that you're performing. And sometimes some of your weakest spots are not observed. You don't get a chance to be observed by your coworkers or your manager. So I think it's a balancing act, that you first need to do a self-assessment of what is needed for you to be trained or enabled or enriched today to do your job well today, the function that you are assigned. But having said that, you need to prepare also for the unknown and the future of your journey. And that you cannot rely on the company. All right. Now, the fact of the matter is that even in digital transformation, in technology space, every vendor will offer their own products and solution and tools for you to learn. But out there are many choices. So therefore, you also have to balance to say, apart from learning your own products and services, what do you learn? The complementary ecosystems of solution, or the competitor, or the complementary offering. Because at the end of the day, in order to be a trusted advisor for your client, especially now to drive digital transformation, it goes beyond product implementation. So my call to action for any audience is look at the balance of what is needed today to manage your today's work, given the circumference of the work and the role that you are playing, not to forget that. But also ahead, what else do you need to complement now that you do not have? Like critical thinking, like business analytics, or really how do you do cost management today, which is very important for COVID management, right? And then what else do you need ahead? So I guess these will be your own responsibility, working with your manager, your management, in the case of your company. If not, look at government initiative. Across the region, all technology players are crazily now going passionately, working with government bodies, institution, community, or even NewCampus like you to supplement and complement what is missing from the firms itself. So I guess everybody has a part to play.
Yeah, and I think you're right around there's no one size fit all. When we look at education, one of the reasons why it's been such a tough industry to crack, it's because it hasn't transformed over the past 100 years. So how do you align, the right corporate partners, the right government policy, the right type of, universities, all the way to, teaching your kids? I'd love to fast forward, the next 2-3 years, because right now a lot of L&D and HR efforts is focusing on reacting to COVID. But Verdane, how do you guys think about, what happens in 2021, 2022, the next 5 years? How do you even position Outlook now when there's no solution or answer of what the next couple of years could look like?
Yeah, the thing is, for our business, technology, the use of technology as a result of COVID, has just accelerated. So Elaine talked about digital transformation, and I think our CEO has gone on record to say that we've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months since COVID hit. So I think in more than ever, we have heard many of when it wasn't a CEO conversation, when it was an IT conversation, now the use of technology and the use of communication and collaboration is now a CEO agenda. It's on the CEO agenda, right? And all of that has to do with how more and more companies are putting their employees, more and more leaders are putting their employees and empowering their employees, enabling collaboration, and closing the gap, right, to using digital to close the gap, which was previously done in a more physical environment. And all of that is now becoming a #1 priority for more and more businesses. So actually, it's not so much about ambiguity for us. It's more about how fast they're going to change and how fast they're going to get there. And the companies that are doing that really well are the ones who are appearing to be much more competitive as well, and being much more able to create new business models to address the new challenges that the pandemic has presented. So we don't, sorry, I was going to say, we don't just talk about the new normal, we are talking about the better normal.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to follow up on that, Vidane. What would you say are some of the lessons that your company and your team has learned over the past 9 months that you want to double down on? Is it the way that you're looking at goals and objectives? Is it the way that you look at certain markets? What would you say are the 3 things that you've taken away as a team leader this year?
All right. So I mean, just focusing on us and how we manage, how we have managed things. I mean, even Microsoft, we had to digitize certain processes, right? So there were certain things which we had done face-to-face, like signing a contract, which we couldn't, which had to completely go digital. So I would say, for us, we still had last mile things that we needed to go and do, and we were happy to have been able to accelerate that. So for us, that is the better normal, and we're encouraging more and more of our employees to look at the better normal. Where else can we look at to accelerate and make digital way of doing things much more impactful? I think the other thing is the missing element of people, the connection with the people connection through the face-to-face. So we're hoping, obviously, at some point that we'd be able to live and work in a much more of a hybrid environment. We do expect more people to be comfortable with working from home, but that also means that going to work will need a different value proposition. Going to work isn't now about bumps on seats, right? Going to work now is what interaction, what collaboration, what experience can I get from going into the office and spending time with colleagues and my boss and collaborating. So that needs to now become the higher order bid around why people come to the office. So we are actually rethinking now on how we, China, as our office in China has now completely open for business, and it's 100% to normal until in a 50-50 kind of mode, and you have to kind of book a space. So I think the idea is we need to transition the employees back into that, but the value proposition for why people come in has to change, and that will be our better normal.
Yeah, and I totally hear it's going to be very exciting to see how companies take new approaches, especially when you have new joiners and focus on growth going to next year. I'm going to be jumping into the question. So one of the questions from Gaurav is, how do you build trust with colleagues just online without meeting them in real life? And I'm probably going to flick this over to Elaine because you've had a lot of experience building remote teams. How would you answer that question?
So I had team members that I need to manage in my day-to-day life outside my GDEXA mentoring. That's my part-time. I guess I have been managing team members remotely anyway. If you are managing Asia Pacific, you can't be in every city at one go. So that's the fact. And there's a tendency that we tend to give a lot more care, or at least we should, to the people that are furthest away, and not necessarily ignore them and giving them less. So I guess trust is not about checking calls. Trust is about giving them a space, a safety net to fail, or to crash that moment if they find too uncomfortable during COVID, too tiring and all, but letting him have a space to come back after a rest or a break. So the way I build the trust is let you decide on your schedule. I cancel and halve most of my calls during the COVID. I reduce sales forecast. I reduce cadence review. And I say, take the kind of time that you need to settle your home, your life, your child carrying things, or your parents' issue, or anything. And we manage by exception, and we engage from there. Some of the session, instead of doing cadence review, I actually jump onto the piano and play some music for them. For those that are having their birthday celebration, we play some games to kind of guess who is who. You know, these are their baby photographs. I guess through games and more humanized dialogue without too much engineer approach that show the true human relationship. That's the baseline for trust, and not methods or certain topologies, certain terms, or 15-minute check-in and all. You don't need to be rigid. You need to be real and just operate at that level. So I believe that's very powerful for me.
Thanks for sharing that, Elaine. And I think going to our next week's sessions, we'll have piano and Japanese cooking as part of the itinerary. Dean, I wanted to jump to the second question because I know it's a very exciting time for you to be launching the business in the next couple of weeks. But I'd love to hear more about how you're thinking about, obviously setting up the company structure and ensuring yourself and the team members are building the right type of, connectivity beyond just, Zoom or virtual calls.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very interesting question because, I mean, C-Suite only came into existence as a company in June. So we're still very nascent. And what that means is, we're a COVID birthed company, right? So actually, there are 6 of us. We're in 3 different countries. I've never met my CTO face to face, believe it or not. But we have a great relationship. And although it's virtual, what we always do is make sure we set aside time to discuss not just work when we talk every week in a call, but catch up on what's going on in your life. I mean, it just so happens that both of us have got young babies, right, who are about the same age. So we're both going through the same life pains at the moment and challenges. And my head of UX, my head of design, he's based in Budapest in Hungary, and the rest of us are in Singapore here. The Singapore mob, we meet twice a week in the office and we catch up and, we try and go for coffee or lunch if we can. But it's been a very interesting time in that regard too. It's the first time ever that I've employed someone and worked so deeply with someone and not actually met them in person. And at the moment, I don't even know when that will happen, right? So it's definitely a new challenge, but I think the norms of human dialogue and human conversation and human relationships still apply, right? It's about making time for people. It's about listening, active listening, and mutual learning. So, it is a bit different because it's much easier to pick up on a raised eyebrow or a nuance such as that when you're in the same room as someone. But you can still get by with virtual tools, and I think all of us are having to get used to that, and we're probably all getting better at it with every day that goes by, and we'll have to, right? Because the norms that we were used to, it doesn't seem like they will return anytime soon. Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be my take on it.
I wanted to finish this session on a high note because we've run out of time. But I wanted to do a blitz question with all y'all on the call, and I wanted to hear, what are you most excited about for next year as continuous learners, as leaders in your own right? What are you excited about going to 2021? And what suggestion should you give to those on the sessions today in looking forward to the next step? But Dana, I guess I can pass this to you.
So, question, personally or professionally?
I think it's actually blended now. So I'm happy to go with a gray answer. So either personal or professional is fine.
Well, look, I'm excited about, and I'm looking forward to going towards the hybrid model. I'm looking forward to the better normal becoming a reality versus just an idea. I think we have proven that working from home can be effective. What I think the pandemic has also shown is, and to add on to what everybody has said about building trust, that leaders who are authentic are also better leaders, and showing vulnerability and showing authenticity also leads to being a better leader, more effective collaborative teams, high performing teams, and it does build trust, I think, and empathy. So I'm actually looking forward to everybody just stepping up and becoming better at building and making that better normal a reality.
Thanks for sharing that, Vidane. Elaine?
Well, my goal and focus is very simple. I've thought about quite a fair bit during this COVID time that people, institution, government, organization, private or public, can all do a lot to help with sustainable goals. And this cannot be ignored any further, because this COVID has brought about economic, social, political, any kind of tension. So I wish to elevate my own contribution beyond that and offer myself as a volunteer to UN, which I've already done so by stepping into UN immersion and a lot more. I believe that we professionally are quite aware of what we need to do to excel. But I think today, as leaders, we got to go beyond. We got to go high level. Don't wait. Don't wait for government alone. Don't wait for your boss to tell you what to do. Don't wait for things to occur and then you follow. I believe that if all of us take that bold step and think macro, then diplomatic ties will be better, will be more peaceful kind of moments. There will be more forgiving human nature and more curious culture out there. I feel that these are too and too detected. So I want to play a part in it. And 365 days from now, if I finish my program with UN, I'll be putting up the banner and say that I'm certified on that. So this is my purpose of contributing at the UN. Thank you.
Very excited to be following the journey over that. And last but not least, Dean, tell us what you're excited about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think on a macro level, right, I'm excited to see what new innovations, new technologies COVID is the catalyst for, right? Because we're definitely on an inflection point, and new ways of living, working, everything that we do potentially is going to change, and there'll be great new companies that are built on the back of that and great new ideas that come along. So I'm looking forward to that on a macro level, and also on a macro level to see who was right about what shape the recovery will be, right? Will it be V, U, K, chair shaped? I heard someone talk about a reverse square root shaped recovery, which is quite abstract. And then at a more granular level, you know, personally watching my young baby daughter grow up into a little person is going to be fun next year. Building the C-suite community and scaling the business is going to be really great fun, and I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited about growing the team as well, and getting some great new people to join us and help us elevate, you know, what we're doing to an even greater degree. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for next year. But as this year has shown us, we never know what's coming, right?
Yeah, and I think now it's more on us as, you know, being part of humanity to, you know, as Vidane mentioned, have that empathy, or Elaine, you know, do something a lot bigger than yourself. And that's what I'm really hoping to be really the key message for today's session, because at the end of the day, it's very easy to get short-sighted and tunnel vision on the day-to-day grind. Thank you so much for being part of today's session. Hope you have a wonderful week. For those on the call, if you want to get in touch, we'll be sharing this video link for you to rewatch, and hopefully you can connect with Elaine, Dean, and Verdane on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. Over to you, Lily.
Thank you, Will.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for that little glitch. My mic wasn't working, but thank you to all of the speakers for such an insightful, sharing. I absolutely loved hearing about, all of your, what you're doing and learning during these times, and how you're connecting and communicating as well. So I'm going to wrap up this session. And for the viewers today, if you have any more questions or thoughts about today's panel, do let us know in the chat, and we'll try to make sure that it gets answered offline. And please also make sure to fill out our feedback form, which my colleague will link in the chat, and on how you enjoyed this first panel, what you liked, and what can be improved. And since we've just been talking about learning mindsets, NewCampus has been building a learning agility index with the Singapore government, where we're collecting insights on how leading teams in Asia learn. So this will be a 10-minute questionnaire that's quite easy to fill in, and we're going to be sending you your results and your profile, like the one with more detailed information. So you can click on the small green button below to do the questionnaire. So if you've just joined in, welcome. We're just wrapping up panel 1 of Educating the Next Generation of Leaders, a virtual conference by NewCampus. So now we're going to have a quick 10 to 13-minute break before we go into the next and final panel session around future of work. So at 5:10 p.m., please promptly go to session 2. You can find that at the tab at the top, where you have the schedule session 1 of 2 panel, and then you can click into panel 2 to start the next panel around future work and future-proofing your career. So we will see you in a little bit, but thank you all for joining us. I'll see you in panel 2 in 10 minutes.